My name is Elizabeth Bellamy, and I'm 25 years old. The morning of the most important day of my life. I woke up at 5 a.m. and couldn't fall back asleep. My Yale School of Medicine interview was in 14 hours. I had spent 3 years building toward that single moment. The late nights in the library, the volunteer shifts at the free clinic, the MCAT retake I paid for myself by working double shifts at a diner. Everything I had was riding on that interview, and I knew it. I lay in the dark of my childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible question they might ask me, rehearsing my answers under my breath like a prayer. I had one blazer, one good one, a charcoal gray wool blend jacket I'd bought secondhand from a consignment shop 2 towns over, pressed and perfect, hanging on the back of my closet door like a piece of armor. I'd had it dry cleaned the week before. I tried it on 4 times just to make sure it still fit right. That blazer was the most professional thing I owned, and I had been protecting it like it was made of gold. My sister Vanessa was 22, still living at home, and had never once in her life been happy about anything I achieved. Every acceptance letter I received, every scholarship, every good grade, she met it with silence or sarcasm or some small cruelty she could pretend was a joke. We hadn't been close since we were children, but I had learned to keep my distance and my mouth shut. I thought distance was enough. I was wrong. I found out what she'd done at 7:30 that morning. I walked into my room after breakfast and immediately smelled it. Sharp chemical wrong. The blazer was still on the hanger, but when I lifted it toward the light coming through the window, I saw the damage. Pale, uneven splotches spread across the left shoulder, the lapel, and down the front panel. Bleach. She had poured bleach on my blazer. Not spilled, poured. There was no other explanation. The pattern was too deliberate, too thorough. Someone had stood in my room and destroyed the one thing I needed most on the one day I needed it. My hands were shaking when I walked downstairs. Vanessa was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal, not even looking up. My mother was at the counter refilling her coffee. I held up the blazer and said as calmly as I could manage, "Did you do this?" Vanessa shrugged and said she didn't know what I was talking about. I looked at my mother. She looked at the blazer, then at me, and said, "Elizabeth, stop making a scene. It's just a jacket. You're being dramatic." My father walked in from the hallway, heard those last words, and didn't even ask what happened. He just said, "Your mother's right. Don't start something before a big day." That was it. That was the full extent of their response to their daughter's blazer being ruined the night before the most critical interview of her life. Don't make a scene. Don't start something. As if I was the problem standing in that kitchen. I went back upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed, holding that destroyed jacket, and I cried for exactly 10 minutes. I let myself feel every bit of it. The rage, the humiliation, the grief of realizing that the people who were supposed to protect me had spent my entire life looking the other way while one of their children hurt the other. 10 minutes. Then I stopped. I'll start the rewrite from exactly where your provided text begins. Since a full 1,500-word rewrite won't fit in one response, here's Route Part 1, rewritten in a fresh, engaging U.S. English style. I carefully picked up the blazer one last time and examined it beneath the bedroom light. Before giving up, I tried everything I could think of. I pressed every wrinkle until the fabric looked crisp. Then, I ran a steamer over the sleeves and lapels, hoping the heat might somehow make the damage less obvious. When that didn't work, I hung it back on the closet door and stared at it for nearly a minute. Nothing had changed. The bleach had permanently altered the material. Instead of a smooth charcoal gray, pale streaks spread across the front and sleeves like faded clouds. Under certain angles, the discoloration almost looked intentional, but only if someone wasn't paying attention. Anyone who looked closely would immediately know the jacket had been ruined. There was no miracle waiting for me overnight. No stain remover, no dry cleaner, no replacement, just reality. For several minutes, I argued with myself. Maybe I should cancel the interview. Maybe I should call and explain. Maybe I could borrow something. Every possibility ended the same way. There wasn't enough time. Missing the interview wasn't simply postponing a meeting. It meant walking away from years of sacrifice, years of studying, years of believing I could earn a place somewhere that felt impossibly out of reach. I had not survived everything behind me just to surrender because someone destroyed a blazer. Slowly, I slipped it on. A clean white blouse, black tailored slacks, simple black heels. Then, the damaged jacket. I buttoned it carefully and faced the mirror. At first, all I noticed were the bleach marks. Then, I stopped looking at the jacket and started looking at the woman wearing it. She looked tired. She looked nervous, but she didn't look defeated. That was enough. If this is what I have, I whispered to my reflection, then this is what I'll wear. For the first time that morning, I actually believed it. The drive to New Haven took nearly 2 hours. The highway stretched endlessly ahead while I rehearsed interview questions in my mind. Why medicine? What inspired your research? Tell us about a challenge you've overcome. Ironically, I no longer needed to invent an answer for the last question. By the time I reached campus, my stomach was tied into knots. The admissions building stood quietly among beautiful old brick buildings, surrounded by tall trees whose autumn leaves covered the sidewalks in shades of red and gold. Students hurried past carrying backpacks and coffee cups, completely unaware that one interview inside that building felt like the most important day of my life. Inside the reception area, 7 other applicants were already waiting. Every one of them looked polished. Expensive navy suits, perfectly tailored jackets, designer briefcases. Everything about them suggested preparation. Everything about me suggested survival. For a brief moment, I considered keeping my arms folded across my chest to hide the stains. Then I stopped myself. If I walked into the interview trying to hide, I would spend the entire conversation apologizing without saying a single word. So I lowered my hands, sat up straight, and waited. One by one, applicants disappeared through the interview room door. Each time it opened, my heartbeat accelerated. Finally, the receptionist smiled toward me. "Elizabeth Bellamy?" I stood immediately. My legs felt strangely light as I followed her down the hallway. She opened the office door and stepped aside. "Good luck." The room was warm and surprisingly simple. Bookshelves lined one wall. Medical journals filled another. Large windows overlooked the courtyard. Behind a polished wooden desk sat the dean of admissions. He greeted me politely before opening the folder containing my application. I thanked him for seeing me and took my seat. For several seconds, he silently reviewed my file. His eyes moved carefully across the pages. Then they stopped. Not on my GPA, not on my research, not on my volunteer work. They settled on my blazer. I felt my face grow warm. Here it comes, I thought, the silent judgment, the uncomfortable glance. Instead, he looked back down at my application. His expression changed. He slowly leaned back in his chair. Then he spoke. "Wait." His voice carried curiosity rather than criticism. "You're her." I blinked. For a second, I wondered whether he had mistaken me for someone else. I met his eyes. "That depends on who you're looking for, sir." A genuine smile spread across his face. Not the practiced smile admissions officers use to make nervous students comfortable. A real one. He turned my application toward me and tapped the name printed across the top. Elizabeth Renee Bellamy. Then he reached into a manila folder sitting beside his desk and carefully removed another document. He placed it next to my application. I recognized it immediately. It was the award letter from the American Medical Student Research Foundation. Months earlier, my research paper examining healthcare access in underserved rural communities had received the foundation's highest undergraduate honor. I stared at the document, then back at him. "You remember it?" He nodded. "I remember arguing for it." That answer surprised me even more. He folded his hands together. "I served on the review committee that year." I sat quietly, listening. Several reviewers thought another paper would be a safer choice. He smiled. I disagreed. He lightly tapped the research paper. "Most undergraduate submissions rely entirely on statistics." His eyes met mine again. "Yours sounded different." I waited. It read like someone who had actually lived the problem. I smiled softly. I had. He nodded immediately. I thought so. Something inside me relaxed for the first time all day. The interview hadn't become easier. It had become real.